What Edgar Cayce actually said about heaven and hell has almost nothing in common with what we were taught in school. Not in religion, not in modern spirituality. Neither of them. Throughout history, humanity has tried to find the answer to one single question. What happens to a soul that loved, suffered, lived, and one day stops breathing? Recently, one of the viewers asked me this question, and it struck a chord with me more than I expected. Because whether you grew up religious, whether you walked away from religion, or whether you've been trying your whole life to figure out what's actually true, this question is underneath everything. In Cayce's readings, you won't find the answer we were given as children, but you also won't find this popular idea that everything is love and light and that only unconditional happiness awaits everyone. There is something else there, something more precise, more demanding, but at the same time offering much more hope than any simplified fairy tales. This will be a detailed conversation. Stay with me until the end.
Why this question matters. The version most people in the West grew up with came from a particular reading of Christian tradition. Heaven, a place of eternal reward. Hell, a place of eternal punishment. A final judgment that decides which way you go. And once you're there forever. This version has shaped how billions of people think about death, about morality, about meaning itself. It's been used to terrify children. It's been used to comfort the dying. It's been used to justify almost every kind of human behavior, both noble and terrible. And for many people, somewhere in their lives, it stops being believable. Either because it doesn't square with a loving God, or because it doesn't square with their own observation of reality. When that breakdown happens, most people go in one of two directions. They reject the whole thing and decide there is nothing, no soul, no afterlife, no consequence. Or they swing toward a softer story where everyone, regardless of how they lived, ends up in a kind of universal love and light. Cayce did not go in either of those directions. In thousands of readings on the soul, the afterlife, and the journey between lives, he laid out a picture that is neither the punitive medieval cosmology nor the modern spiritual softness. It is something older and more precise, something that draws on the ancient mystical traditions, the same sources he often pointed to, and arrives at a coherent vision of what these old words actually mean. The Cayce vision can be summarized in one sentence, but it takes the rest of this video to really understand what that sentence means. Here it is. Heaven and hell, according to Cayce, are not places. They are conditions, and those conditions are not imposed on the soul from outside. They are created by the soul itself. That's the headline. But the headline is also the place where most viewers stop and assume they already understand. They don't. So let's go deeper, starting with what Cayce was not saying. What Edgar Cayce did not say. To understand what Cayce actually meant, we first have to clear away three assumptions most people bring to this question. First, Cayce did not say, "There is no hell." This is the most common modern misunderstanding. Many spiritual teachers today, in their desire to move away from medieval terror, tell people there is no such thing as hell, only love and light awaiting every soul. According to Cayce, this is not quite true. Hell exists. It is real. It is experienced. But it is not what religious tradition described, and it is not eternal in the way most people imagine. Second, Cayce did not say heaven is a single place where everyone happy goes. The Cayce afterlife is not a kind of celestial waiting room. It is layered, multiple. Each soul moves through it according to its own state of development. What looks like heaven to one soul might look like an ordinary classroom to another, and like an uncomfortable confrontation to a third. The destination is not uniform because the souls arriving there are not uniform. Third, Cayce did not say judgment comes from God. This is perhaps the most important correction. The traditional picture has a divine judge weighing souls and assigning them places. The Cayce picture has something very different. The soul, upon leaving the body, is shown, or rather, comes into direct awareness of, its own condition. The judgment is not external. The judgment is the soul's own recognition of what it has become through the choices it made. This is harder to grasp than divine judgment, but stay with it. In the Cayce framework, there is no judge in the traditional sense. There is awareness. The soul, no longer protected by the body and the limitations of physical mind, sees itself clearly for the first time. It sees the love it gave. It sees the harm it caused. It sees the patterns it built, and that seeing itself produces what we call heaven or hell. When Cayce was asked about hell directly, his answers consistently pointed away from external punishment and toward internal recognition. A soul that lived in cruelty experiences, after death, the full weight of that cruelty. Not because God is punishing it, but because the soul, finally seeing itself, cannot escape what it became. A soul that lived in love experiences, after death, the resonance of that love, not because God is rewarding it, but because that love is what the soul now is. This is the foundation. Hell is the soul facing what it created. Heaven is the soul resting in what it cultivated. Both are real. Neither is imposed. Now let me show you what each of these looks like in more detail.
Now a difficult part is about to start. We'll start with the topic of hell. Not because it's the most important, but because this is where most myths are. If what you hear causes you anxiety, don't be afraid. It means that the material has hit its mark. Stay with me.
Hell as Cayce described it. According to Cayce, hell is not a place. It is a condition the soul enters when it leaves the body still bound to the patterns it created in life, without the body's distractions to soften them. Let me put this in concrete terms. In life, a person who lived with chronic anger had many things to soften that anger, work to distract from it, people to direct it at, a body that grew tired and went to sleep, a physical world that kept changing and demanding new responses. The anger was real, but it was also constantly diluted by everything else. In death, according to Cayce, those dilutions are gone. The body is gone. The work is gone. The targets are gone. What remains is the anger itself, the pattern itself, without anything to absorb it. The soul finds itself in a condition that mirrors what it cultivated, not in metaphor, in direct experience. This is hell in the Cayce sense, a soul facing its own contents without the protection of the body. For a soul that built its life on resentment, the after-death condition is saturated resentment, without anyone to blame. For a soul that built its life on greed, the condition is bottomless want, without anything to acquire. For a soul that built its life on cruelty, the condition is the awareness of every wound it caused, without the ability to look away. Cayce was clear. This is not vengeance, it is consequence. The universe, in his readings, operates by what he often called the law of like attracts like. The soul does not get punished for what it did. The soul simply continues to be what it made itself. And without the body's veil, what it made itself becomes its complete reality. This is why Cayce spoke so much about the patterns we build in this life. Every choice in his framework is not just an action. It is an act of shaping the soul itself. The soul that leaves the body is the soul that the choices built. Now, and this is critical, Cayce did not teach that this condition is eternal. This is one of the most important departures from medieval cosmology. In the Cayce picture, no soul is condemned forever. The condition the soul finds itself in is a starting point, not a final destination. It is the place from which the soul begins its next phase of work. Some souls remain in this condition for a long time by ordinary standards. Some recognize their state quickly and begin to move out of it. Some require additional incarnations to complete what they could not complete in death state alone. The journey is long, but it is a journey, not a sentence. Cayce sometimes spoke of helpers, souls who have moved further along, who reach back to those still in the darker conditions. He spoke of the love that pursues even the most resistant soul. He spoke of grace as something that is always available, but cannot be received until the soul is ready to receive it. The hell in Cayce's vision ends when the soul itself ends it, usually by recognizing what it has become and beginning to want something else. The traditional Christian image of hell as eternal fire was, according to Cayce, a distortion of something true. The fire is the soul's awareness of itself. It is intense. It can feel endless from the inside, but it is not, in fact, endless. The soul that is willing to change can begin to change, and the universe, in his readings, is designed to support that change at every stage. This is the harder, more demanding picture. There is no eternal damnation, but there is also no instant absolution. The soul makes itself, and the soul unmakes what it made. By its own choice, in its own time, with help from those further along.
It's all hard to take in, I understand. When I first went through these materials myself, it wasn't the existence of hell itself that scared me. I was struck by the thought that everything we build within ourselves during life, we continue to be that same person after death. There's no starting over from scratch. The habits and states of mind we've nurtured within ourselves, we take those with us. And the only way is to recognize them in ourselves and start letting them go, bit by bit. This made me look at my own life differently, at my daily habits, at those little things I used to do on autopilot without even thinking, at the moments when I chose irritation over patience, when I let resentment take root inside instead of letting it go. I always thought these small decisions didn't matter, but thanks to Cayce, I saw that they're not nothing. They're building blocks. Every day, I was literally building the person I would become later on. Whether Cayce was right in the details or not, the idea itself fundamentally changed my approach to life. Yes, I'm still far from perfect, but now I live much more mindfully. And now let's take a look at the other side of this picture.
Heaven, as Cayce described it. If hell, in Cayce's view, is the soul facing what it built in cruelty or fear, then heaven is the soul resting in what it built in love. But heaven, like hell, is not a single place. It is a condition, and in Cayce's readings, this condition is layered into many levels. Not a hierarchy of reward, but a continuum of consciousness. Each soul enters the level that matches what it cultivated, and from there, it continues to grow. Let me walk you through the basic structure as Cayce described it. At the most immediate level after death, a soul that lived in genuine love finds itself in a condition of warmth, reunion, and clarity. Cayce often described meetings with those who had gone before, not as ghosts, but as souls in their natural form, recognizable, capable of communication. The traditional image of being welcomed by deceased loved ones in his framework is essentially accurate, though more subtle than usually depicted. The soul recognizes those it loved. It is recognized in return, and the love that was real in life is reaffirmed. Beyond this immediate welcome, there are deeper conditions of what we might call heaven. Cayce described levels of awareness, levels of understanding, levels of communion with what he often referred to as the divine source. Each soul moves into the level that corresponds to its actual development, not its religious affiliation, not its outward behavior, but its inner state. This is why Cayce sometimes said things that scandalized conventional religious people. A soul that lived in true compassion, even without belonging to any religion, enters a high state. A soul that spent its life in formal religious observance but without inner transformation enters a more ordinary state. The form does not determine the destination. The inner condition does. In the higher states Cayce described, and he was careful with his language here, because words begin to fail at these levels, the soul experiences something close to what the mystics of every tradition have tried to describe: direct knowledge of the divine, unity without loss of individuality, the peace that ancient texts called the peace that passes understanding. And then, and this is where Cayce's vision becomes especially distinctive, even from heaven, most souls return. They incarnate again, not because they failed, but because there is more work to do. Cayce taught that the soul's full development requires both the spiritual realms and the physical realm. The physical realm is not a punishment. It is a school, a workshop, a place where certain things can only be learned by living them. So heaven, in the full Cayce picture, is not the final destination. It is a stage. The soul rests there, integrates what it has learned, prepares for what comes next, and often returns to physical life to continue the work. Only at the very end of the soul's long journey, after many lives, much growth, in the gradual completion of its mission, does the soul fully reunite with its source, never to return. That final destination, that complete return. Cayce sometimes described it, but always cautiously. It is beyond what most of us are equipped to imagine. He spoke of it as the soul becoming companion and co-creator with the divine. He spoke of it as the end of separation. He spoke of it, when pressed, as the original state from which the soul came in the first place. This is the full arc of the Cayce afterlife, not heaven or hell as final places, but a long, layered journey of the soul becoming what it is meant to become, moving through states of awareness, sometimes returning to physical life, sometimes resting in higher conditions, always supported by what he called the divine, but never absolved of its own responsibility to grow.
Before we finish, I want to discuss how all of this can be applied in real life. After all, any theory is only useful when it actually makes a real impact. Cayce was strict about this. Knowledge that doesn't translate into practice is just empty decoration. Here's what changes when you start taking his words seriously.
How to live with this. If Cayce was right about even half of this, certain things become obvious. First, every choice you make in this life is shaping the soul you will be when the body falls away. Not in some distant, theoretical sense, in a very immediate sense. The patterns you build today, the patience or the anger, the generosity or the resentment, the openness or the closing off. These patterns are not events. They are construction. You are, every day, building the conditions you will inhabit when there is nothing else to inhabit but what you have made. This is not a threat. It is a practical observation. Most people live as though death is the end of consequence. According to Cayce, death is when consequence becomes most clearly visible. The body softens everything, the body distracts, the body forgets. Without the body, what remains is the soul itself, and the soul is exactly what the choices have made it. Second, the condition you find yourself in after death is not permanent. This matters in two directions. It means that no soul, no matter how lost, is beyond change. The hell you can create for yourself is real, but the way out is also real. It begins with recognition, with wanting to be other than what you currently are, with opening, even slightly, to the help that Cayce said is always reaching toward every soul. And it means the heaven you can cultivate is not a fixed reward. Even the soul in higher states continues to grow, to serve, to choose. There is no final laziness. There is only the continued movement toward something more. Third, religious observance is not the path, but love is. Cayce was clear on this distinction. The form of religion can support the inner work, or it can substitute for it. The form that supports is precious. The form that substitutes is dangerous because it gives the appearance of progress without the substance. What determines the soul's destination is not what religion it belonged to, but what it actually became. Fourth, and finally, compassion for others, both the living and the dead, is appropriate at every stage. According to Cayce, the soul in dark conditions can be reached by the love directed toward it from others. Prayers for those who have died are not empty rituals. They are, in his framework, real acts of help. They are the same love that reached toward you when you needed it, now reaching toward those who need it now. This is the practical core. You are constantly shaping yourself. You can change. Love is the operating force, not form, and those who have gone before are not beyond our reach.
Let's finish on an honest note. I don't know if Cayce is right about everything. No one knows. We are talking about a theory that no one can personally verify until they find themselves there. But what I can say for sure is this picture seems far more logical and coherent than anything I have come across before. It doesn't try to frighten us, and it doesn't offer false comfort. It treats our soul like an adult, capable of answering for its actions, capable of growing, and capable of finding its way home, no matter how much time it may take. And even if this worldview is not 100% accurate, the practical conclusion from it is undeniable. We are constantly shaping ourselves, and this process does not end with the death of the body. The love that we cultivate in ourselves now is the very space where we will rest later, whatever form that rest may take. If you grew up with the conventional idea of heaven and hell, I hope this video gives you some food for thought. Not as a replacement for old ideas, but as a deeper look at the same eternal question. And if you have moved away from any teachings at all, I hope you've seen that Cayce offers not a medieval nightmare, nor a modern emptiness. It is something else, something much more ancient and much more demanding. Think tonight before you sleep about one question: what am I building within myself right now? Who will I be when the body is no longer around to somehow soften my essence? Don't look for the answer in words, just let the question live within you. If something in this video was useful and important to you, please share it with someone who needs it right now. And if you want to continue on this path, there are many other videos on my channel about the soul's journey. Thank you for walking this path with me. I know the topics are not simple, and I am grateful that I can discuss them with people who are willing to listen seriously. See you in the next video.